So good morning or good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Blackletter Brunch. I'm Raoul Martinez. Today's Blackletter Brunch is going to be very international. I have two presenters. Louise Grünewald from Durango, Colorado, is going to talk about her experiments with stitching on painted papers to create imagery and letters. And Helene Jenssen, based in Oslo, Norway, not Germany, will present Gothic rhythm contemporary moves, how Blackletter and Gothic letterforms influenced my recent projects. So I'd like to thank you both for agreeing to do this presentation today. Um, I asked you both at the last minute and you both came through. I really appreciate that. Um, and Louise, so why don't you start?
Okay. Okay. Now why didn't that just come up? Okay.
Is that
There we
your?
go. Okay. So, um, as Raoul said, my presentation is about these experiments with stitching on painted papers. And the first few images are not going to have letter forms, but I'm trying to show a progression of how I got going on this. And I will introduce, why won't that go for, oh, there we go. Okay. I have a dear friend here in Durango named Ilza Avix, who is Latvian, and she is an internationally known textile artist. And I have another friend that's also a textile artist, and we meet every month or so in one another's studio and share stories and work with one another. Well, Ilza teaches all over internationally, and this is a front page of a workbook of hers called The Stitched Mark, and she does a lot of things with mark making and stitching. And so I took a workshop from her about, oh gosh, it was years ago here in Durango. She did a workshop where we did some stitching on fabric. And it was really, really enjoyable and interesting and fun. And here are a few of the pieces I did. And this was again on fabric, not paper. And you can see down at the bottom, I was playing around with letters. And here's just a scrap piece of practice paper where she would show us the various stitches we could do to make marks on paper. And sometimes we would start with a mark made by a marker or a pencil or paint, and other times simply stitch. I got the idea that it would be fun to play with letter forms in this way too. However, I really, after that workshop, which really was about 10 years ago, I kind of put that stuff away and didn't really think about it. And then our dear Heather Martinez, who I think you all know, who is the queen of creating workshops, convinced Ilza to do a workshop for calligraphers to stitch on paper. And it was really just about an hour on Zoom, but it was so inspiring. And I actually got really motivated to do something with it, much more than I had before because it was on paper. So this was a piece that I had done I took that workshop, The Liberated Line with Yukimi and Mike and Massimo and Amity and Cora back in like at least a year ago. And this was one of the pieces I had done in Yukimi's section, which you can probably recognize that was based on some of her ideas. And I sort of liked what I had done, but it looked rather bland to me. So this was Arches Tex Wove with some acrylic inks, and I thought, well, maybe I'll try out. I don't have anything to lose. So maybe I'm going to try stitching on this piece. And so I decided to experiment with some of the stitches that Ilse had shown us. And one of my favorites was French knots, which maybe some of you that have done embroidery or that sort of thing before know how to do that. I had no experience, and it took me a while to really make those look okay. And then these were seed stitches that I added to some of the shapes. And here's how the piece ended up. I turned it to be a vertical piece instead of horizontal. And then I made a big mistake right here, and I tore the paper when I was stitching. So I covered it with some painted rice papers. And then I thought, oh, that probably would add to the piece as well. So then I added some more pieces like that. And I feel like what I ended up with was much, much more interesting than my original painting. And then with many, many thanks to Mike Gold, who I think it was last winter or so, um, did a workshop in Chicago and maybe other places making calligraphic banners. And when I saw what he had done with these wonderful teak frames that there's magnets in between, sandwiched between two pieces of wood to hang, I thought, wow, that would be a really nice way to present some vertical pieces. So that got me kind of started on a little journey. I was really, really tired of framing art after I had a show. 2 summers ago, I had a show and I had 30 framed pieces that I had to frame myself. And I just got so sick of it that I've given away most of my frames and decided that this was a much simpler way to present work. And I had a show coming up. It was actually in last October. And I decided to proceed with, well, this is the next step, but I tried to proceed with doing work on banners. So this is a photo taken from looking down from a bridge of our Animus River, which runs right through our town. Helena, it's a great river to kayak too, by the way. But this is what it looks like at low water. And being a river person, I just love what happens with moving water and the kind of shapes it makes and these beautiful colors and the rocks. So there's another kind of swirling shape. And this started to remind me of some things I might do with this stitching idea. So I proceeded to paint on Arches Tex Wove, and this is also done with Bister inks, and create, using calligraphy pens, just to relate this to calligraphy, the rock shapes and the colors, and then add my French knots, which is I was working on perfecting at the time. And this was the very first piece I came up with that technique. And I had so much fun with it that I did decide for the October show to just continue with this idea of presenting banners. So what happened, fortunately, was I showed this on Instagram, and right away somebody wrote me and said, "Can I buy this?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I was gonna put it in the show, but I don't really sell art like all the time." So I thought, why not? I'll just sell it to her. And when she came to pick up the piece, she goes, "Oh, Louise, you should just do more of these. They'd sell really well in Durango." And I thought, oh, okay. So I took her up on it, and I decided to try a few more pieces along the same line, but not make them all the same. So once again, you can see the calligraphy work and the painting that started the piece, and then the French knots that completed it. And this was the next one I did. So as you see, it's a variation on a theme, and I really didn't get bored because they were all kind of different in their own way. And then I got the idea of creating seed stitches to represent the current of the river, so that the next piece I created would be even more of a variation on a theme. And so once again, the piece started with painting the background, and I was using Bister Blue, which is quite green, but I threw in a little bit of ultramarine to just kind of make it a little bluer, and then using embroidery thread and trying to show the layers of the rock with the stitching. So that piece came out as such. So then a friend of mine was visiting from Montana, and I hadn't yet hung the pieces in the show. And she says, "Oh, I really like those pieces. I'll buy the one that doesn't sell." Well, they both sold in the show. So I had told her, well, if they sell, I'll do another one for you. So here I am on my fourth iteration of this idea. And as you can see, I changed some of the colors and some of the shapes and worked with the formations. So that was my segue into this process. And I found that stitching was so relaxing and so mesmerizing that I'd be doing it and the day would fly by. And oh, there was the finished last piece. But then I was done. I mean, I wasn't going to do another one of these, so no worries. But I started seeing stitching everywhere I looked. So we were hiking in the mountains. This was summer, and we have these beautiful wildflowers called asters. So I did some sketches of asters. And so once again, I started with the background paint. I used just pointed markers to sketch out the asters, and then flat brush calligraphy to add the leaves, and then finished up as such. So that was another view of just my fascination with this. And this is a bird that I've used, the symbolic bird I've used in some of my work, and I decided to try that as well and use calligraphic strokes in the background initially, and then use the stitches as overlay. And this was the one that came out of that. And I initially did the strokes with a flat brush, and then I sort of highlighted with colored pencil in some of these areas just to add a little more color to the piece. And of course the French knot had to be somewhere, so here it was with the accent of the red. I started to get interested in the idea of words, not necessarily legible, but words in stitching. And so this piece started out with some shapes that I had made. And then here is a detail where you can see that these are words and letters, but they're not intended to be legible, but they were based on letter forms. And I was thinking that there's got to be a lot of different ways to show letters. And I thought, well, with longer strokes, that might be kind of interesting. And there's some more letters down here. And so those accent this piece. I call it flying fish for some reason, because it just reminds me of fish swimming around. And this one was done on some paste paper I had made years ago. And I really liked the colors and the shapes, but I sometimes when I make paste paper, I just save it. I'm sure many of you do the same thing and then say, well, what am I going to do to add to this? So I cut it into sections so that I could make a banner. And then I did enhance a little bit with some colored pencil and in here and some gouache. And again, French knots. Here, I started out with some, whoops, let me go back. Here I started out with walnut ink in the background on a sheet of Arches Tex Wove and did, ooh, hang on, stop, wait. Okay, I started out with a background of walnut ink and then used Dr. Martin's pen white to make a gestural alphabet from top to bottom, A to Z, with white. And I was looking at it and thinking, okay, what do I need to do to this? Because the whole thing was just the brown color in the background. So I decided to paint around the letter forms with sumi, and that made the whole thing kind of pop forward a little bit. And then I started liking it more. And then you can see here with the detail, I filled in some of the counter spaces going down with the French knots for accent. So I started to feel like, okay, this has some potential for doing with letter forms as well. Here, I started again with a background of some Bister inks and random shapes going down with some collaged elements. Then I added some I colored in with sumi and French knots, and then I added letter forms going down the alphabet again, as you can see. And here's a detail going from A, B, C, D, E, all the way down. So I just started to have a sort of a fun experiment with what I could do with letter forms. Why is that? Okay. Here, I was again working with lettering and calligraphy. This was kind of, I don't know if it was before or after the election, but I was at a meditation and the speaker was talking about some quotes. One was, "This too shall pass," which I looked it up, it's attributed actually to a Persian proverb. And then "conditions are such" is attributed to the Buddha. And she was just talking about the nature of change in our lives. And I was inspired. So here is sort of a blend of Bister colors in the background that I started with, and Arches Tex Wove. I think I wrote the lettering first with a waterproof sumi ink pen. And I knew that I could wash the bisters over it without smearing the ink. And then I liked the idea of how can I do some other lettering with the embroidery thread. And you can see what I did here. I first wrote it out and then covered it with the thread to do a little different kind of lettering than what I had done before. Okay. So my friend Ilza, who is dear to me and started this whole damn process, I was like, "Ilza, you have started this thing, and I am just addicted to stitching right now." So I have many friends whose birthdays come September through November. And I got this idea for Ilza. I thought, well, she's done so much for me. I'm going to do her name in stitching. So again, it was another way to experiment with letter forms and see what I could do with different stitched marks. So this was her birthday card. This one of the attendees here will recognize this one. I have a kindred spirit across the pond, and her birthday is in October. So I decided what fun it would be to do her birthday. And KS is kindred spirit, and she's the #1 kindred spirit. She can identify herself if she wants to, but
yes, I can't help laughing. I wondered if this would feature. It's still propped up in the studio now, Louise.
Margaret and I discovered through Blackletter Brunch that we were kindred spirits in terms of some of the ways we viewed different works. So I just thought, what fun this would be to do her birthday card that way.
Thank you again.
And this is for Lisa, who is my other textile artist friend, and her birthday is in November. So I did this one for her, and this is how the card came out. When you do stitching, unless you're super experienced, the back of the piece of paper can look pretty funky. So I mounted it on a piece of stiffer paper, and that was for Lisa. And then this one was for some of you people that have been in the calligraphy world longer might know Edie Roberts, who lives in Eugene, Oregon, and is a wonderful calligrapher, and her birthday's in November. So that one was for her. So it became a lot of fun to play with, where are the thicks and thins in letters, and how can I embellish the shapes with a little more stitching. So I had a lot of fun with that. This one, I'm not sure I'm finished with this one yet, but I have a little 7-year-old friend that comes to draw with me, and her name is Josie, and I wanted to make something for her. So another way of doing the letters by outlining them that way. And finally, this is the piece that kind of was the end of my experiments. I'm finally ready to move on because my printing press is calling me. And once again, I had a piece of paste paper. What is that? Okay. Another piece of paste paper that had that I had written an alphabet on, sort of an angular alphabet, and decided to add stitching to it. So this is how I went down the alphabet, starting with A through D, and then E through H. And just going along, trying to figure, where do I put French knots? Where do I put seed stitches? Where do I put other kinds of stitches? So, and based on the colors, the way the paper was in the background, I through Q and R through W, X, Y, Z. And that was the banner that I finished with. And I just realized that I skipped a piece somewhere in pushing these buttons, but it doesn't matter. This was a complete enough show, I think. And I really am happy to have had this very intense immersion into something that was so new to me. And I may come back to it at some point, but right now I feel like I've satisfied my curiosity so far about stitching. I like to work in series, and this created an opportunity. And I usually work in series until I feel like I've sort of done enough, and then it's time to go on to the next thing, and there's always a next thing. So thanks. That's my story.
Louise,
Yes.
have you thought of teaching this technique?
Well, I'm no longer teaching really, so no, I haven't. But Ilse teaches it. I could get you in touch with her.
I
Is this
also
Evelyn?
teach it, Evelyn.
Is this Evelyn asking me that question, or
Yes, this is
Okay.
Evelyn.
Evelyn? Hi.
Yes.
Well, it would be really fun to teach, but I really have decided that I've taught for so many years that I'm kind of, I'm getting older, and I just
You're getting older. Give me a break.
You're the woman the time forgot,
well, maybe I know. Well, maybe I'll think about it, but not immediately.
Well,
But
Dorothy just said she teaches it. Dorothy teaches everything as
okay,
far as I.
okay,
So,
I'm
we can-
teaching it in April here, but I've been
okay,
teaching it for a couple of years, paper
okay,
embroidery only. Great,
great.
but it's
Okay,
fun.
it
But your
is.
things are beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think what's fun about it is, well, for me, it was great. I never became a sewer. My mother was a really good sewer, made me most of my clothes and stuff, and she was so good that I didn't even dare try. And then I was such a tomboy, I wasn't really interested in embroidery or anything. So for me, it was like, wow, I'm learning something new, and it's working on my brain. It's helping me think and grow. And so it was really fun.
Uh,
So
excuse me, Louise.
I have a question.
Janet,
Um, did you have to put anything on the back of the paper to keep the holes and the stitching ripping through the paper?
I neglected to show photos of that, but what I did on the back is really what I did is I took paper, usually the same paper that I had painted, and there was some kind of neat stitching pattern on the background, which Ilza just loves. But my knots on the back were not quite acceptable to me. So I backed the painted paper with a like a film double stick glue, and then I just cut it into shapes and covered the places where the knots were. And some of the backs of the pieces were kind of interesting too, but I didn't really do much to the back. I mean, Archistex Wove is so strong that it could hold its own.
Okay, thanks.
We mostly
Jan-
tape ours. We don't put knots in it, so it's not dimensional. So
That's a good
tape.
idea. And I think if I stitch into books, I'm going to tape and then do the kind of drum leaf where you do back-to-back paper so the tape won't show. Because I didn't want the dimensional, but it didn't matter on the banners.
What about using something like an iron-on Pellon or something like that?
You could.
That you can get very, very thin Pellon, or not, I think I'm using the wrong word, but very thin iron-on.
You're facing.
Yeah.
You could, and when I did use the paper, sometimes I did use Texwell, but sometimes I used painted rice paper.
Mm.
And that's so thin that, but again, with knots, which like I said, I'm not experienced. So some of my knots were kind of lumpy. So I like the idea of using something that kind of flattened everything out. So once I put the piece down and then burnished it, it kind of flattened the knot out a little bit. But if you were doing it in a book like Dorothy said, you'd want to do it very thin. Kind of learn as you go. I mean, I think that if I get back into doing this, and I think going forward, I'd like to maybe add stitching to my etchings and monotypes and my books. And so I'll find different ways to back things and do more with it. But right now, I'm kind of, I feel like I've fulfilled my mission, and
You're stitched up, Louise.
yeah, I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I really like working in series and working through an idea or a concept until I've gotten through it to where I feel like I've sort of saturated both my interest and what I set out to do. And then I set aside, because being printmaker, bookmaker, calligrapher, painter, there are different foci for so sometimes it's fun to just put it down for a while and then pick it up later. But
Well, they were pretty special.
Yeah. And good save putting washi paper on over that tear that you made in the piece. That was a very serendipitous discovery.
it really was. And And now I really like the piece, where before it just was sort of blah. So it was a good practice sheet, and it's actually one of my favorite pieces in the whole series, but it was my first practice thing.
So,
Thank you, Louise.
that's the quality of
Thanks
those.
everybody for your
That
kind
was
words.
splendid. Thank you very much for showing them.
Thank you.
So Helena, our second presenter, is going to talk about Blackletter influences on her work, and how she's integrated Blackletter into her pieces.
Yeah. God, I'm nervous now. Talking after you, Louise. And I completely agree with what you said about working in series. So a lot of what I'm going to show also have a lot to do with series. I like working in series. Let's see if I can share my screen. Give me a second. I'm just going to do one thing. Is that working, Raoul?
I see.
Yeah.
You see your intro page, Gothic rhythm, contemporary
Yeah.
mood.
Super. Yes. When when I said I would love to share some of my recent work or recent projects, I must admit I didn't think about this as giving a talk. I just thought about, you know, sharing some thoughts and some recent work among a group of friends. So as I said to you earlier, Raoul, so when you asked me for a title, I sort of panicked slightly and thought, oh my God, I need to find a title. And I also need to put this into a context. But it's good. It's good when people make you think. And that was when I was thinking about what is it with my recent work that actually has a link to Black lettering or Gothic lettering, because it has. And the Gothic lettering or the Black lettering was also the reason why I sort of joined, you know, the BLB in the first place back in the whenever it was during the pandemic. So I've sort of divided my little sort of sharing of pieces into three stages. Stage one, I'm going to jump back to 1995. Rudolf Koch. Of course, he wasn't alive in 1995, but I can't remember when it was that I first sort of encountered my first handwritten manuscript with Gothic letters. But I know it was at an early age, and it was way before 1995. Maybe I was 8, maybe I was 10. Doesn't really matter. But my fascination for Gothic writing was there. And as a student at Roehampton, I was very interested in Gothic writing, but of course that was not one of the letter forms that they taught. And I'm not sure whether it was sort of late 80s or early 90s when I first stumbled across Rudolf Koch and also Rudolf von Larisch and a few other sort of calligraphers. But these two pieces by Rudolf Koch, the photographs were taken when I, together with Andrea, visited Klingspor in 2022. But especially this one, and I think it was on the cover of a Letter Arts Review magazine as well, was one of the sort of first wow experiences with Gothic writing that made me think it doesn't have to be perfect. It can have that sort of imperfect perfection. It's about the line, it's about the rhythm, it's about the pattern and the shapes that the letters create. So this little piece, I'm not sure I've shown it to anyone since 1995. It was a student work. It was in my degree show at Roehampton, and it came out after a workshop I did with Ward Dunham in London in, I think that was 96. I'm not sure. Could have been 95, could have been 97. And as I said, Gothic writing wasn't really taught at Roehampton. It was a little bit sort of frowned upon by some of the tutors. Lucky for me, Ewan Clayton was there, and he was very sort of supportive, and he was the one suggesting that the workshop with Ward Dunham, which was amazing. But here again, it's about the pattern it creates. It's about the line. It's about the rhythm. It's about the music. So if we jump to the more contemporary 2020s, last week I showed some of you a piece that I made for a chapel in St. Louis, Missouri. And this isn't Gothic lettering, but the pattern and the shapes and the rhythm is actually a little bit more or less the same. It's where it's coming from. And this is a piece from one of my series, Intermissions. And it's not Gothic writing, but it's the same. Again, it's the pattern, it's the shape, it's the music. It's the it's not readable, but it's sort of, it's legible, but it's not legible. And you could say the same about a lot of Gothic writing. It's legible, but it's illegible. And this is also from the Intermission series, the patterns. I mean, it's kind of repeating itself. So when you sort of asked me that question, Raoul, sort of, you know, title and what is your talk going to be about, I thought, it is Blackletter Brunch, so maybe draw some lines to the actual black lettering. Sometimes I do Gothic writing or black letters, like for the illustrations for this is the national curriculum for the Steiner schools in Norway, and they did this collection. They wanted to publish it as a book, so the teacher could have it as a book in their bookshelves, not just as a PDF online. And they asked me to illustrate it. All the different subjects have different writing styles and different tools and techniques, but one of them was actually Gothic writing. But in other ones, this isn't Gothic writing, but still, you know, I can see that the pattern and the rhythm is very, very influenced from my sort of fascination of Gothic writing. And even here, where some of the writing is actually more or less sort of more copperplate or modern calligraphy style of writing, I still feel I have that sort of influence from the Gothic writing. And here. Anyway, so that was my sort of trying to put my two little recent projects that I wanted to share into context. So one of them was this year's Christmas card, and it's also been on display in a gallery downtown in Oslo. And why is it not? Something happened. It's not want. Ah, now it worked. Not sure what happened. It just didn't want to move forward. I love writing, you know, with a pen or different tools on paper, but I also love to make prints. And sometimes the print have a written origin. This one is drawn. And it's it was intended as a Christmas card, and actually I don't know if maybe I'm the only one doing this, but sometimes if I'm really, really stressed and I have a really tight deadline and I'm kind of stuck in a project, I'm not sure where sort of what the next move is going to be, for some really odd reason, then all of a sudden I create something completely different. And this is that kind of project. So I was deep into that Missouri panel thing, and I was a little bit sort of stuck thinking, I can't remember exactly what the problem was. But then instead of sort of tackling my problem, I created a Christmas card. So this one, the title is Pust, which in Norwegian means breathe. And it's from a Christmas song, fairly well-known Norwegian Christmas song. And I slightly sort of rewrote the words so that it would sort of suit me and suit my idea of Christmas. And it would translate into something like, we have cleaned the floors, we have put firewood indoors, we have hung the Christmas sheaf, and we have decorated the tree. Now we're sitting down to rest and to drink the Christmas root beer, whilst the Christmas pork is in the oven and everyone takes a breath. So that's what it reads. And for me, it was also about the sort of, when you have a lot to do, everything is very sort of tight, and then you can breathe. Yeah, so lino cut, I really enjoy drawing them and then transferring the motif to the lino plate. And there you can see the plate when it was inked. And I think I was listening to Stephen Fry while working. It's a podcast with Stephen Fry, and he's talking about bits and bobs. So that's what you heard in the background. So sorry about the sound there. And this, I think, is my absolutely favorite phase of the whole process. It's when you can lift the paper off the first print and see if it actually worked. And of course, you have to do some trial and errors. So I make some trial prints. Maybe I remove a few more bits and pieces from the actual lino plate. And that's the final print. And I made a little sort of a collection. There are 20 prints altogether. Some of them, as I said, they were on display at a gallery in central Oslo just before Christmas. So I sold some of them, and some of them have been sent and given away as Christmas cards. And then I have a small project number 2, which is also a printing project, business cards. I wanted to create something that was me and not just a Christmas card, no, a business card, but also a keepsake, something that was, when you actually give someone your business card, it was something they could use for something else if they wanted to. So I thought, what is me? Well, I love to make little prints, so why not make a lino cut as a print, as a business card, instead of just, putting my name and address down and send it off to the printers, which is also fine, but I just wanted to be more personal. So this is from November or December. I was printing up all my business cards. And I realized after I put this talk together, I haven't taken one single photograph of the plate. And I was looking around my studio for the plate because I thought I could just do it now, but I can't find it. So it is somewhere, but I'm not sure what I've done with it. It's lost in all my mess. So, but that's a little sort of stack of cards. And that's also one thing I just absolutely love, is when you these cards I bought ready-made. They're Indian handmade paper, and just the feel of the paper, and also when you stack them up like that, the little sort of the edge, how it creates yet another pattern. So maybe it's just me, but just like touching little prints like that, it's just like, oh, gives me joy. And all the little orange bits were hand printed afterwards. So actually, this is a combination of lino print and silkscreen printing. Because the little dot is actually silkscreen printing. And of course, you can use them as gift tags as well. It doesn't have to be a business card. And that's the finished business card. And on the back, I used some of the type from my drawers to print out my phone number and website address, and then added some handwriting for my social media sort of nickname. So yes, that was the little sort of project number 2 that I thought I would share. And my attempt to then also create a link from this to previous work and to black letters and Gothic writing, to put it all into the Blackletter Brunch context. So thank you. That was it.
Thank you.
And
Lena,
stop
I
share.
have a question.
I'm going to stop share. I'm just why is it not? Ah, that was why.
I love those business cards. And I also love the print process. I've done, but don't really do lino cuts, but I agree with you that when you pull the paper off the press, it's so exciting. And it is a mystery in a way.
No other feeling quite like it.
Right, right. I also noticed that you were using graphic chemical ink for your business cards.
Yeah.
My favorite is 514 black, but I don't think I can find it anymore. But you used a roller, so you probably used relief ink, right?
I think so. I have the tube. I bought the tube years ago, really.
Yeah.
15, 20 something, and it just has lasted forever. And
Yeah.
it's on its last bits now.
Yeah. I've used a lot of Akua inks for color, but there's nothing like an oil-based black. And it's lovely. So those were, thank you. That was great.
No, and it's just that also when you lift the paper off the print, the sound,
Mm.
the whole process is just, I don't know. I actually really do enjoy cutting it as well.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to that sort of imperfection. I'm not after the sort of perfection. I'm after the sort of imperfect.
Yeah.
We have that sort of raw line. You have maybe the print isn't 100% perfect. You have little sort of, parts of the print which is slightly off or something.
Yeah.
Where's the evidence of the handmade then, rather than the machine made? So you could see the artist's input, even if it meant you were frustrated when you pulled it off the paper off and found that you got blank bits or soft bits. Yeah, I understand, because I've just recently become hooked on lino cutting myself. So you've given me some ideas, Helena. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. But the good thing about lino cutting as well is that it's kind of, I mean, it requires good tools, as everything, but it's so easy to just do. It doesn't require chemicals or, really expensive things. It's just there. Quite easy to do.
Now, you did the prints. Did you just use a brayer and a Baron for every print? You did them all by hand?
I did them all by hand. Yeah. I have a small printing press in my studio. sort of A3 size. So I sometimes I use that one, or sometimes I actually use bookbinders.
Yeah.
What is that
Nipping
called
press.
in Norwegian? It's a book press, but it's got one of those handles where you pull it down to get the right pressure. So you could it actually, in theory, it works the same way as a printing press.
But you're
If
not
that makes sense.
screwing it down, or there's not a wheel. You have an actual handle that you're pressing.
Yeah, you have a wheel, but you also have the handle. So you get that sort of printing press feeling when you use it. So for smaller prints, I can use that one.
Do you ever emboss them before you ink them?
No, I haven't. No, because it will be kind of be embossed when you.
It will be, yeah. Sometimes when I do a relief print, though, I do an embossing before I mess it up with ink, but because sometimes that can be really fun as well. But I think the thing about printmaking that's so fun, though, is like you said, you love the cutting, you love the designing, and then you love the printing. So you're kind of in 3 different processes and working different parts of your brain as you go. I use a printing press, and I love the mechanics of doing that. And it's very different from, for example, lettering, where you're focused and still. So it's got a lot of variety to it.
Is yours an etching press then, Louise?
Yes, it's not a letterpress, it's an etching press. Yeah.
Yes, I'm just getting to know how those things work.
Right. Well, yeah. So are you using an etching press?
No, I'm not yet. I've only used a nipping press to do my tiny prints that I think you've seen one of.
Yes. And what is a nipping press?
Well, it's like the bookbinding press.
Okay.
The one with the huge handle on the top, or wing nut that you wind down and just it's pressure rather than rolling it through.
Right. Well, one of the things about the etching press is if I'm doing multiple colors or something, I can register it, and set it on the press bed and have the paper in the same plate press for the next plate. And
I'm sticking to black and white so far.
I love black and white, but color is seductive too. So
yeah, maybe. I mean, it depends what you're doing with it. But for me, the appeal of lino cutting has always been that tremendous strong contrast and the different textures that you can achieve just by fiddling with the tools.
Oh, I agree.
That's what I'm exploring. But I've just done one a couple of weeks ago with cutting some broad pen lettering out. And the people at the printmaking group were rather surprised by it. I don't think they'd ever seen anybody do anything quite like that before. So it's that and what I've seen from Helena today has given me some ideas.
So Helena, do you do a drawing and then in positive and then transfer it onto the lino plate in reverse to get your thing, or do you cut backwards to start with?
No, I do a drawing and then I transfer it onto the plate in reverse.
Yeah.
I usually use sort of what's it called again? The paper that will sort of give color off when you put it in between. Not blue paper, but what's it called?
The red ochre paper.
Well, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, you buy it ready-made and you just stick it in between.
Carbon paper.
Carbon paper. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for.
Some people even remember that when there were typewriters.
So usually I use the white carbon paper.
Right.
Anna just put something in the chat. Anna, where are you? It's the
Raoul. I'm using it on the chalkboards too, the white one, and it comes in red and blue and gray.
Yeah.
Not come across that before.
It's like carbon
I think it's
paper.
American. It's an American brand.
It's
Yeah, I
like
think it
carbon
is.
paper, but it's waxy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They
Yeah,
call it transfer paper.
right.
I know it
Yeah.
by the brand Saral, Saral, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, that's what Anna, had said.
Yeah.
I just made my own.
Yeah, and you could do that as well. Sometimes I just use some pigment and I just smear it on the back of the drawing,
Right.
and that will do the trick. But yeah, and Andrea, I noticed, or are you? There you are. I noticed you had a photograph online in social media somewhere with the same box that I'm using.
Yeah, exactly. It's the one brand available, more or less.
One thing that's kind of fun sometimes, I don't know if you've done this, Helena, but is to actually work backwards on purpose, so that your letters are going to be really funky, but you kind of want to do that. I find that kind of a fun brain exercise, but I've never been into perfect calligraphy, so maybe that's just me, but
Maybe that would be my next project. Usually when I do things like, back sort of upside down or backwards, it's because sometimes when you tutor a student, you have to write little comments next to their sort of, practice sheet. And sometimes I just do that sort of backwards, upside down.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe that will be my next project, doing small prints that you sort of start out, making just, in reverse.
Well, you really have nothing to lose when you think about it. I mean, you make the print and either it works or it doesn't. But I find that the mystery is part of the excitement, because if I do something and I look at the plate and I'm thinking, I don't know how this is going to come out, and then it either does or doesn't, I just find that really fascinating. And I'm willing to take the risk, because sometimes you come up with something that you couldn't have done forwards. You know what I mean?
True. It is very true. But also maybe looking at your talk, Louise, I was thinking, because I've also done quite a sort of a bit of stitching, some pieces that are sort of all stitched a few years back. Maybe the next project would also be combining lino print and stitching.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking that printing and stitching are going to have a relationship at some point here. Definitely. Yeah.
And we'll manage to link it to Blackletter writing as well.
Yes, maybe I need to try some black letter shapes, so if I ever do another thing, it'll relate to the topic. But I also like the fact that black letter, especially in the black and white, like Margaret said, if you're using the Gothic forms and you're printing in black and white, you even could do something backwards and do the strokes, and then I don't know, makes me think, because I'm ready to go back to the press. So thank you.
Maybe you should do a talk, Raoul, about all your fantastic Christmas cards over the years.
Oh, yes.
Well, I could show the process. Yeah, I do them all. I used to do my Christmas cards using solar printing, and then I found that I would create the solar plates myself, and then create a negative using the technique that you showed us, Louise. Putting two Mylar printed negatives on top of one another and lining them up perfectly, and then putting them on top of the solar plate, and then exposing it for 12 seconds or something like that. But I found that I just couldn't create a deep enough relief to be used on a letterpress printer.
Yeah.
When I was printing with a letterpress printer, I was getting a lot of over inking on the print. So that's when I started sending my images to Crown Flexo, and then they would create the polymer plate for me with a real deep relief. And then I could really crank up the pressure on the letterpress printer, and
Right.
very nice, crisp, very black print.
Yeah. fabulous results.
Yeah, you got really good results doing that. And I think part of the thing is because you used that sort of photographic technique when you first were doing solar plate. Because when I get the deepest relief, I just ink the plate and then write into the ink and pull it away. And then I get a really deep relief. But you can't do that with the kind of precision that you're looking for. And I love what you've got found with that. It's fabulous.
Yeah, I'm pleased with the results.
Yeah.
So I just create the, I do the calligraphy, and then I scan it in, and then I put everything together using Photoshop, and then Illustrator, and create a vector image from it, and then send the vector image in a PDF file to Crown Flexo. And then they send me back the polymer printing plate. And then with Grendel Lofgardist's help, I I glue it, because it has an adhesive back on it. The plate, it's actually flexible. It doesn't have a steel backing on it at all. Just take the paper off the back of the polymer plate, and then you stick it to the base or to the bed of the letterpress printer, and you have to make sure it's lined up perfectly. And then you go to town and put the ink in the printer and start it going, and then it'll ink it really well. It gets it perfectly inked, and you can really apply a lot of pressure with a letterpress printer and get a good impression without over inking. And
What kind of ink?
it's called, I think it's called Panther Black or something.
Is it pasty or is it liquidy or?
It's like tar. It's very thick.
Okay.
It's very, very pasty. And I just put a little bit on the cylinder, and then let the cylinders roll for a while so that everything gets inked, and then I put it in print mode, and then I crank it across. And there's a crank on the printer, and there's the crank moves the carriage across the plate, and so you just do one print at a time, but it goes pretty quickly, and it's fun, it's kind of physical, but
yeah,
rolling back and forth with the carriage. And you can do multi prints per pass, but with the printer that Grendel has, the plate can't be too big because her boxcar base isn't big enough for more than two images, really. I'd have to, maybe I'll give her a bigger boxcar base for Christmas or something, and then use it for my printing. And you know that Betsy Raymond gave Grendel that printer. It used to belong to Betsy, and now it's in Grendel's basement, or rather her garage. So, and that's how I've been printing. Oh, but Helena, I wanted to say I was very happy that you had met Ward Dunham. I didn't realize you had taken a class from him at Roehampton. He's touched everyone in the calligraphy world, or at least in the blackletter world, a little bit.
Yeah, it was an amazing workshop. I did actually look around into some old boxes to see if I had any photo evidence of it whatsoever, but I couldn't find anything.
Of his work?
No, well, from the workshop. It was before social media and smartphones, so I did very often bring a camera with me and take photographs, and I sort of hoped that maybe I'd taken a photograph, and maybe I have, but I just couldn't find any. I just remember it as being I learned so much in the 2 days that the workshop was, and I was a student, and I really felt like a complete beginner. So when it was you and Clayton who mentioned it to me, and when he did, I was just like, yeah, but you know, I'm a complete beginner, so I would be completely out of place in that workshop. And it's like, no. I think this would be the right thing for you. So I'm really grateful that he said that, and also that I actually went, and Ward Dunham was fantastic. A really, really good teacher.
And he was great at creating those blocks of lettering and then his compositions as well. I have a photograph. I took a workshop from him years ago too, but I remember one piece that he had where there's this huge red sun at the top and then a whole bunch of black letter texture that you couldn't read, but the composition was so striking. And I was thinking of what you do with letters that aren't necessarily black letter, but you know, one of the things I think of in design is for calligraphers to see text as a design element. So you create this text, but it has to relate somehow to the page as an element as well. And that's what yours are doing with all sorts of lettering. And I love that.
Right?
Thank you.
You're creating a texture.
Mm.
And I love about your work that you have. You can
Text and texture. Are those
Text
words?
and texture.
Text and text. Well, that's Yukimi's workshop, but,
Yeah.
but so you think, is that where the word text, I mean, which was the first word? Anyway. Just
But if you look at pages from you know the 1200s of Gothic handwriting, you have that texture, and
yeah.
it's you know it's and also it's music. You can almost hear it when you look at it.
Yeah.
So yeah, texture, and I'm not sure what came first, but yeah.
Can I make a request?
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Carl.
May I make a request? You know, I'm starting to think about Ward's issue of alphabet, and we want to have a section where people give us short remembrances of Ward, and I haven't sent the notice out to the membership yet, but so this could be the first time I could ask. There is going to be a section like that, like there was in Alan's issue, like there was in Susie's issue. So if you want to start thinking about that, the whole summer issue is going to be devoted to Ward. So I won't need him till mid-April. But, you know, if you could start thinking about that, what Ward meant to you, if you have a story about him, an interaction, you know, whatever you'd like to write about, send them to me, please.
Okay, I'll try to remember to include that in the recap that I
Oh,
sent.
great.
Okay, and can I use your email address in that?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. He touched everybody. Yeah, he's very influential in the Blackletter world. So
Yeah, I still have the reed pen as well that he cut. I use it
Really?
occasionally. Yeah.
you have it with you?
Bamboo pins. I have a few bamboo pins that he cut while I was watching.
And I have some of his what's it called again? Oh my God. Seal, you know, the coloured
the
stuff.
wax seals?
The wax
The
seal
wax?
stuff. Yes,
Sealing
I got
wax.
some of his green wax
Yeah.
stuff. He told me he had made especially so it wouldn't fall off in the post. So it was more flexible than the type you would sort of normally buy in the shop.
Huh.
I have some of that, just no seal to use it with.
Nikki Yeager took over that business, and I can't remember what he calls his business, but he's selling the same formula on his website. Do you remember, Nancy, what it's called? Artifex. ARTEFEX.
Okay.
Yeah, I have some postcards from him.
And he's selling seals also, Margaret.
Mm-hmm.
You
Oh.
could, I don't remember if he has that Albrecht Dürer beetle seal that Ward used to sell. And the Blackletter Buzzsaw.
So what if you wanted to design your own seal? Would he be able to make it into a
I
thing?
don't know if he gets into designing seals.
No, I mean if
You
one
can find
like
somebody.
designed one and then sent him the design if he would.
He would know where to go, you know, because Ward and Linnea did their own. I'm sure Nikki would know where you send it out. Just like Raoul was sending out his stuff to get plates made. There are services for that kind of stuff for sure.
Okay, and his name is what?
Nicky Yeager, Yeager, Nickyyeager. He's on Instagram.
Okay.
It's what's the name? Oh, Motos Grabendi, I believe, is his handle on
Yeah.
Let me see.
I'm sure you could look that up if you Googled his name, maybe. Yeah.
I'll put a link in the chat.
Okay. I've always wanted to do that. I thought it, but you know, another thing.
You should get one of those, you know, you can have a ring with your seal on, so you can, you know, just put your stamp on almost anything, anywhere.
That's cool.
Well, that's what Ward did.
Yeah.
So I put in a link to Nikki on Instagram, and now I'll get the Artifacts
Thank you. Yeah.
website.
But there's an Artifacts Wax on Instagram. And that should be him too. Artifactswax.com
Yes,
is the website, so that's
Thanks. I'm not finding that.
Oh, his Codex is coming up.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Wrong year.
So anyway, thank you so much for attending today, everybody. Thank you so much to Helena and to Louise for doing the presentation. It was fascinating. Both of them were fascinating. And I hope to see you next month for the Blackletter Brunch. It will be on Sunday, February 23rd at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And I will send the link to that. So, and I have no presenter yet lined up. So if anybody has an idea, please come forward and let me know.
Yeah, you roll.
Maybe I'll give a presentation on my process for creating my holiday cards. I could do that. It's not that involved, but I could show you one or two of my holiday cards. Yeah.
That sounds great.
That would be great.
Okay. So thank you all, and you have a good night or a good day, and I will see you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks, Raoul. Bye.
bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Mm-mm.